Brian, why don't you take it away?
Take it away. Well, hello.
Yeah.
Hi. Hi. So, welcome to the second Comix Experience Book Club meeting for this month. The October meeting in September, which is awesome. The October meeting for the Unbeatable Squirrel-Girl. Awesome. Hi. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
So, and hi to Ryan, and hi to Rico.
This is Ryan.
Hello.
That's Ryan.
Hello.
This is Rico.
Hello.
Yay! I guess Erica's not coming. Yeah, Erica's not coming.
Okay, so here's Ryan. Here, go ahead.
Here's Ryan. Okay. So we're here to talk about the comics. I hope everybody enjoyed this. Liked it enough? Yeah. All right. You're the person who hated last week's book. Last month's book, she liked it, so that's a good sign.
I did like it.
That's good. Okay. So, does anybody have anything they want to say before we can start? We can go straight to questions and answers, or we can just. Anybody have a statement they'd like to make? Cameron would like to make a statement.
I would
Cameron,
start this one off. I super enjoyed the fact that you guys included the letters column in this trade, because that's something that
I really like that too. Yeah.
I never see that. So, good shit on that. That's really good.
Thank you.
Was that whose decision was that? Where did that come from?
I think we forced them by working it into issue 4 for that first page gag in the 4th issue, where she beats Galactus. Spoiler alert. And then you go straight to the letters page for 2 pages. By doing that, I felt like they couldn't not put the letters page in, because then you'd be taking that joke out of the issue. It wouldn't really make any sense. So by simply writing it so that they had no choice, they put them in. It was great.
So how much of the is there any blowback from you from Marvel about the interstitial stuff, the letters pages, or the my favorite part of Squirrel-Girl, I think perhaps is the teeny tiny text that really is hard to read at the bottom of every page. Is there any blowback from Marvel on that?
We made that teeny tiny text larger and darker after the first issue, but they were down with everything. I think both of us have suggested. I don't know, Rico, have you gotten blowback? They've been fine for me. They said just keep doing it.
No, it's been a dream.
Yeah. They've been very flexible. They've been good to us so far.
Well, it's certainly unlike any other Marvel comic that's on the stand. Yet at the same time, I really feel like it feels like a classic Marvel comic. You know, I read this and I feel like I could have just read Spider-Man #1. Amazing Fantasy 15. Just there's angst and there's it's true to how current people think, and yet it's also this really bizarre fucking thing out on the fringes. And I just wonder how that works. How do you make that work?
I feel like, the way I pitched Squirrel-Girl was that I thought, let's do a all ages comic with the larger sense of all ages. So no, don't make it for kids, make it for everyone. And the secret I have to writing all ages is you just make sure that everyone keeps their clothes on and nobody swears, and then you've got all ages going for you. And I feel like the classic, like Amazing Fantasy #15, they were also, maybe not intentionally, but that was the spot they were hitting. They're trying to get larger. Spider-Man's got problems. That's his whole deal. But his problems they're not, at least in the classic comics, all the drugs he's been doing or STDs he's been getting. They're like balancing classwork and keeping secrets from his aunt, who's really old. So it's sort of fun and goofy, and all I can do is write a comic that I'd like to read, and so I'm glad that what I'm interested in doing, other people are as well. It's not just me writing this really lonely, unpopular comic.
No, that's great. I mean, I think it is. It really speaks to, you know, sort of a new audience who. But again, it's very classic. There's just that's kind of what I love about it. It's both contemporary and classic, and that's a really hard trick.
Well, the contemporary part is funny because as an example, in issue 6 or 7, where she beats up the Avengers in 26 seconds, I said, hey, I want her to beat up the Avengers, and I thought we could have like Captain America there, and she could beat up Captain America, and they were like, sure, but just so you know, Captain America is an old man right now, and he has a super soldier serum sucked out of him. And I was like, okay, I mean, it's sort of less good if she's just beating up a defenseless old man. Kind of mean. And then they said, no, he's a good fighter. Don't worry about it. He can get beat up by Squirrel Girl. So I was like, fine. Yeah. So there's these elements of contemporary Marvel Universe that sort of creep in that kind of you work them in, but sometimes they're surprising. Like Kraven was immortal in the first issue. I didn't realize he was immortal until I said, hey, can I use Kraven? They said, sure, but just so you know, he can't be killed right now. I was like, great, I can work with that.
No, that's very good. The other thing that I really appreciate about Squirrel Girl is that Doreen she has a normal physical body type. She's not we have a lot of talk about diversity in comics and all of this, but even still, when we have female protagonists, they tend to be 36, 24, 36, and I love the fact that she's got a big ass and it's okay, Yeah.
It's a great ass.
Yeah. A lot of that is the work that Erica and Rico do in making her this character that feels like she's someone you could know, she's someone you might run into on the street. She's not this supermodel who also happens to fight crime, which, I mean, Erica said like she wants her to look like she's a woman who you couldn't beat her in a fight by just like sitting on her and pinning her down.
Well, that makes a lot of sense to me. It makes a lot of sense. When I spoke to Marvel about trying to set this up to do this meeting, Will Dennis said to me that we, no matter what, we had to invite Rico to this because Rico is the heart of Squirrel Girl. Is actually how he put it. So tell me, Rico, why are you the heart of Squirrel Girl?
I don't agree with that. I mean, I am on all the weirdo like Marvel books right now. Spider-Gwen, and I was doing Howard, but I'm off that now. But it's the Rico-verse.
Rico-verse, yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I had turned down an Avengers job the day before they offered me Squirrel Girl, and they gave me Ryan's pitch, and I just read Ryan's pitch, and it was so funny, and I was like, I cannot not do this book. I have to do it. So
and then we put all the Avengers in, and you had to color them anyway.
That was a dirty trick, and now she's in some new Avengers group, and I don't know any of these characters, and so I'm just going to need a lot of reference from the editors, and I hate team books.
We pranked you pretty good, though. This is all a long con.
It's not cool.
So what's the creative process? How do you build an issue? Does it all come from the script, or do you guys talk about it ahead of time about what you want to do, or tell us about your process?
Yeah, I'll write a script, and there are writers who do scripts sort of in the Marvel style, where when there's a fight scene, they'll say, "Here's 2 pages of fight scene. Knock yourself out, artist. All you need to do is punch each other, and someone has to say, 'Oh no, you didn't,' and then you're done." And I've never been able to do that because it feels like my job as the writer is to write the comic, and saying, "Here's 2 pages. I don't know what happened. Surprise me," feels like that's kind of a cheat. So I'll write a comic, and I'll say, like, Erica, here's what could happen. feel free if you have a better idea to do something better, because I don't want to feel like you're beholden to my crappy fight scene I've written here. If you can do it anything better, please do. So I like it to be sort of a collaborative experience where the visual artist can take what I've written and make it better, which is always nice. And it's always a real pleasure to get the pencils and the inks and the colors back and seeing how, like, legitimately pretty this book has turned into. Like, it's such a gratifying thing to read. And when I'm writing it, I keep images up of previous issues of just shots of what Doreen's doing or what Nancy's doing, because I find the way they're drawn and the way they're colored captures their character so well that it helps me to write them. Just glance at this person and be like, oh yeah, I know what she'd do in this situation, because that picture sort of says it all, which is great. I've never done that before, but I found it really useful for Squirrel Girl.
When you write your scripts, the interstitial, because you were talking about Marvel style, and I don't know if everybody in the audience knows this. That what Marvel style means is that you kind of write a plot outline, and then you dialogue it later, as opposed to what we call full script, where you write page 1, panel 1, page 1, panel 2, page 1, panel 3. So two kind of fundamentally different approaches. And I was wondering if the what I would call the interstitial language at the bottom of the page is that in your full script, or is that added later? How does that work?
I will write the script, just like a zero-th draft for myself, and sometimes I'll put those in. I call them alts. I'll put them in as I'm writing if I think of a good one. But usually when I finish the book, I'll do another read over to make sure everything flows and edit and massage dialogue and stuff. And at that point, I'll add in the little asides at the bottom. So, I mean, I like them because I feel like my goal with a comic book is to make it feel like you're getting your money's worth. And if I can cram a little joke there in the margin, that sort of, even if the rest of the page is terrible, I've written the worst page in comics, maybe there's a funny joke at the bottom, and that's the last thing you're reading. Oh, that was a good page after all, and turn the page. And I also like that since they're kind of hidden, I've had people who say like they've read the first book, they have to do a second book, and they realize there were these notes, and they go back, and they get to read them again. The book can surprise them, which is fun, to have a book that you can reread. It has something new for you. I really enjoy. I like the idea of surprises in text. I think they're fun.
I very much agree. The book, of course, reprints the original Steve Ditko story. How much did the original story inform what you did or do, or well, I don't know? Talk about how that works.
Yeah, I mean, Erica did sketches of Squirrel Girl when we first started out, and she was sort of basing it on how she looked in that first story, and she looks really scary in that first story. She's got these crazy eyes. She looks kind of insane. But I like working it in that, she was 14, and we've all made some bad choices when we were 14 about how to dress and how to put on makeup around our eyes without making it look like we're part of the insane clown posse or something. So I like to keep that as sort of, this is who the character is when she was 14, and she's older now, but this is all stuff that happened. This informs who she is. And I think in the second issue, we flash back to that first story with Iron Man, where Doreen's like, I remember what you said, and in her flashback, Iron Man's saying not what he said in the comic, something much more favorable to Doreen. But it was fun to sort of work that in for someone who doesn't know the character, hasn't read that issue, but now can sort of see there's more to her than what you're seeing in this new series. And I like that in this flashback, she also looks, completely insane.
So I think I might open it up to questions from our audience. Do we have any? We have questions. We must have questions.
Hi. I don't know if you can see me in the back, but I have not read other Marvel comic books, and this is what I wanted to, and it's just such a big thing to jump into.
Sure.
And this is what I kind of expect them to be, and I love it. I love this. I think this is sort of the essence of what fun sort of campy comic books are with superheroes, and how campy doesn't necessarily mean unintelligent or just slapstick humor. But I definitely appreciate those. So what I loved was, again, like including in this issue that we have the original storyline where we see Squirrel Girl. Because again, like you get a grounding for the character, you get a fun sort of history, and you get to see how she's changed. But what I really loved about her is that you watch Marvel movies and they're destroying New York, and you're wondering, like, what about that guy who's waiting in line at the ATM because he needed to get rent money, and now his day's totally screwed over, and, like, is his landlord going to believe him? Like, I like that. I've always wondered about the little people on the ground, and Squirrel Girl seems like a little person on the ground superhero, and, like, the Avengers are going off and doing this stuff, and she's like, oh, but wait, this is me and my adventures, and they're totally valid, and this is how I deal with them. And you guys are doing your big plot lines, but here I am hanging out and going to college and juggling that. So I thought that was a cool perspective on her, and then like she's just this sort of alternative superhero in my mind in that way. And then I think her humor is alternative, and I just overall enjoyed her. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted.
But answer it somehow.
Yeah.
In that pitch that that they sent to Rico, I referenced the Lego Marvel video game. With the idea being, I'm like, I played this game recently, and what I liked about it was that they have all these characters, but they introduce them in such a way that they're not sort of talking down the audience saying, as you know, Mr. Fantastic's a stretchy guy, but they just introduce him in a way where if you didn't know he was a stretchy guy, you'd figure that out really quick. And if you did, you're like, oh yeah, Mr. Fantastic, what's he up to this time? And they were all sort of classic, sort of their peak versions of themselves. We weren't caring about continuity or like what Mr. Fantastic did in issue 465 was just here's the stretchy guy, here's the fire guy, here's the rock guy, and here's the invisible woman. And I said I wanted to capture that sense of, you know, you don't need to know 60 years of Marvel continuity to read this comic. And then, of course, as soon as we launched it, they then erased 60 years of Marvel continuity. So I guess it's not a big deal anymore. But, yeah, the idea was to make it accessible. And the whole thing with her Deadpool cards in the comic is it's a really quick way to bring new readers up to speed. And it's also great for, I found out later as I was writing, it's great for exposition because I just put in, like, here's this character, here's their motivation, here's what they want, here's what they've been doing, really succinctly in a way that you couldn't do otherwise. You can't have characters say, you know, as you know, Squirrel Girl, Kraven the Hunter has often hunted Spider-Man, but now he's here looking for some new prey. And it's just like, I think every comic should have Deadpool cards now because there's such an efficient way to to bring people who haven't read other Marvel comics up to speed with what these characters are and what they're doing.
Yeah, so a real question is, are you now pushing at the office to make Deadpool cards like real? Because I know the letters, they mentioned something, but are you really, really championing for that? Because I really want to have actual collector cards. I think that's really...
Yeah, I feel like somebody is because the Marvel guy in charge of social media, I think he messaged us both, Rico, but he was like, you can tell people to stop asking for these cards because I can't make them happen. And I was like, I wasn't telling them. They wanted them themselves. The problem is, I think I said there were like 4,533 cards in the set, and that's a lot of cards. That's a lot of writing.
Yeah.
I talk to a lot of kids that read the book, and every kid wants the Deadpool cards.
They're really cute. I love that the artists doing the images for the cards always draw these not off-model, but different style versions of the characters. Like the Kraven one in the first issue, he's super cute. He's adorable. Yeah. Got a big grin. I love him.
So you've had two things you brought up: the Kraven being immortal and Captain America being an old man that were different than what you expected. Was there anything you had to change or abandon because of something in the Marvel Universe?
I don't think so. I mean, I still had her beat up Captain America. And the Kraven thing being immortal worked in really well into the comic. It gave her something that she could help him with. Which I feel like that's the key to the character, is that she is someone who is totally down to fight crime with her fists and tail, but if she can solve the central problem that's causing the crime, she'd be much happier to do that. And I wish I could say that was in my pitch, and I was like, I'm a brilliant man who gets to the core of this character instantly. But I was working on the outline for the first issue, and I sent it to Will, our editor, and I had her beating up Craven in one of the ways she imagines in the final issue. I think with squirrels down the pants. That's how she does it. And Will wrote me back, like, I always saw her as someone who would sort of solve the core issue of the conflict. And it was like reading the back of the teacher's copy of the textbook where all the answers were there. And I was like, of course, that's who she is. This is the character. Got it. I understand her now. And so I rewrote the issue and used the Craven can't be killed except for by Spider-Man thing. And it was honestly like an epiphany that just gave me, this is who Squirrel Girl is. I didn't know her before. I thought I did, but now I've got it 100%. So if you're stuck, I recommend emailing your editor and asking for the answers because it works out great.
One of the things I've always thought was it isn't so much that people like superheroes. It's that they like the Marvel universe. They like the DC universe. They like that soap opera, that interconnectedness, that things change, that things move, and even though things don't actually ever change or ever move, but that's the thing that's actually appealing is the sense that it could be something, So yeah, I think you've really with this you've really captured that sense in a way that maybe the straight Marvel comics haven't captured. And I kind of find it interesting that the joke book, and I have more notes. Okay, the joke book is kind of doing the most classic Marvel comic of them all.
That's very kind. I mean, that's what we were shooting for, is something that's classic and that feels, I don't want to say timeless, but feels like it's something you can read now or 30 years from now. Whereas if something's too tied into what's going on in the Marvel Universe today, it can be harder to read that 30 years from now because you'll be like, oh, why is this character not the way I recognize him? I mean, it's dangerous too because you want the characters to change and you want them to grow, and you don't want to be dealing with the same problems you had 60 years ago. I mean, Spider-Man, he's got similar problems, but he's out of high school at least. Like he's growing and developing as a character, and I feel like that's important for the characters. Otherwise, they're just static, right? Mm-hmm. And there's no stakes. It's funny when I started the book, I was like, all right, Squirrel Girl, she's really good at not losing. How can you write a comic about someone who doesn't lose? That's really hard. And I was like, wait a minute, how many fights does Superman lose? How many times does Batman be like, what? That Joker really beat me up today. And I realized that it's like most superheroes, if not all, are effectively unbeatable. They have challenges, but they overcome them. And sometimes people get mad at Squirrel Girl for having all these victories under her belt, but everyone has so many victories under their belt. She's just the one who has squirrel powers and does it.
The best powers of all.
I agree.
So I'm going to switch to some internet stuff, and then I'll go back to you guys live. So Remy Barrett, hi Remy, says from the internet, in addition to the discussion of Doreen's bod, I want to add that I really appreciate her confidence, and that she never even crosses her mind to doubt her body or her identity, and how it isn't about questioning her own worth because of her body type or appearance. So was this something that was a conscious decision? Did it just evolve out of Erica's art? How does is there something you can speak to about that?
I feel like it was always there. I mean, the thing with Doreen initially was that she was a presumed mutant in the Marvel Universe, and the whole thing with the X-Men is that they're hated and feared by those they've sworn to protect. But she has this really visible mutation, and she's never been down on it. She's never been like, oh, it's so sad how I have these squirrel powers and can talk to squirrels. She'd be like, yeah, this is great. Clearly it's awesome. I have a tail. I can jump really far. I can talk to squirrels. This is great. Let's go fight crime, Iron Man, because I'm down to do whatever. And that confidence is there, I think, in her first appearance. I just leaned into that and said, yeah, obviously she's not going to be ashamed of who she is or unsure of who she is. She's Squirrel Girl, and she's here to kick butts, and eat nuts. And I feel like that's just the core of who she is his confidence in herself and the people around her, which is fun. Like, a lot of superheroes are not confident in the Marvel Universe. Spider-Man's insecure.
That's kind of the whole thing about Spider-Man.
Yeah, that's the whole thing with John Spiderman.
Yeah. So we have from April Kent. Hi, April. And anybody else, if anybody else is online, feel free to ask us questions. April asks, how did you come up with Nancy and Mew?
Nancy is character-wise based on a friend of mine. I was trying to think of who Squirrel Girl would hang out with, and I just sort of, using the old writer's trick of going through your friends you know and who's most interesting. And I have a friend who, like Nancy, is very direct and very good at saying what she wants and kind of scary. So she's unafraid and unashamed of who she is. And I thought that could work really well. And Mew is, my friend has a cat named Mew. That's where the name comes from. And I think, Rico, the visual color of the cat comes from a cat that Erica has.
Yeah.
Yeah, she sent like photo references for Mew. So Mew's based on 2 real life cats, and Nancy's inspired by my friend, also in real life.
Very nice. Do we have a question from our audience, perhaps?
I got one.
Yes, please.
I liked how you balanced, her normal life and her superhero life, but I felt like it escalated really quickly with Galactus as the main first. I'm just curious if you had any debates about whether to go that big right at the beginning. How you made that decision?
Yeah, the Galactus. I think my pitch said in the first arc she'll fight Galactus because of course she would. How has she not fought him yet? But the initial pitch also originally had more focus on there being mysteries at the school that she would solve, and then Gotham Academy came out, where it was characters in the Batman universe solving mysteries at the school they hang out at, and I thought, oh, okay, that's a really good riff on that. I don't want to do that too. So I focused more on the superhero part of it. But I mean, the balance in her life, I think that first issue takes place only over a couple hours. Like, she's running around all day trying to solve this Galactus problem and also, go to orientation and not miss her first class for compilers. So it's a balance, but it does go pretty quick. And I feel like I got an email from someone who was worried that she's not focusing enough on her studies. Like, if she's missing too much class, computer science is a discipline that builds on what came before, and you can't just skip classes here and there and not start missing things. So I need to specify that she is absolutely getting in time to study, and her grades are not in danger.
Was there any problem from Marvel about the characterization of Iron Man, because he's kind of their new flagship character? And the way you handle that, or?
No, it's surprising. The recap pages, which are not in the trade, unfortunately, they're done Twitter style, where they chat back and forth. And Iron Man has not shown up in the comic, but he's always there in the Twitter recap page because I really love his relationship with Nancy, where he's like, I'm an important billionaire, I shouldn't be talking to you, but here I am on Twitter hanging out with you because I enjoy it. And Squirrel Girl being like, hey, Tony Stark, you're super loaded and kind of standoffish, but I'm going to tweet you my dumb jokes and stuff like that. And they've been fine with it. They told me I think he was going to show up in the second issue, but then they're like, oh, just so you know, right now he's busy in San Francisco being this weird supervillain guy. And I was like, okay, that's a lot to explain. Or steal his costume, and he won't be there. And having him in the Twitter recap page, I think, works really well. I really enjoy writing him just through these sassy tweets back and forth. And I'm not sure if he should show up in the comic or not, because I kind of like him just being her Twitter friend. I think that's kind of cute.
Yeah. It's
friends I haven't met.
I always kind of think that like that whole Twitter feed, like it's not actually Tony Stark replying; it's just some artificial intelligence that he's like, interact with, because he's way too busy because he's Tony Stark.
Yeah, and he checks in and he's like, "What has it been doing?"
Exactly.
Spending all his time chatting with Squirrel Girl.
Yeah. So, do we have another question from the audience, perhaps? Yes.
Yeah.
Please.
How did you decide on her major? Computers. I don't remember if that's like really talked about. It may have been mentioned, but.
Yeah, I had two ideas. One was computer science, and one was English major. And the reason I chose computer science was honestly seemed more interesting for the character to study something that was so far removed from squirrels. And I did computer science in undergrad, so it's also very easy for me to write because I don't have to research anything. I can just say, yeah, this is first year CS. Let's learn about compilers. Let's learn about databases. Let's do the intro to all this stuff. So it was part practical and part I thought would be really cool for Squirrel Girl to be doing something that's unrelated to squirrels. And also, not to get put too fine a point in it, but it's nice to show women in sort of the STEM field of science and engineering and mathematics, technology. Yeah. Thing.
We're going to applaud that. That's an applaud line.
So yeah, that was where that came from.
Very nice. Rico, I kind of want to draw you out a little more because you're not saying anything, and you're like, and when I tried to set this up, you were the first person like, I'm in. I want to do this. I want to like come to this meeting. So.
That's a question in the audience.
Well, I'll get to the question in the audience. For Rico. Oh, so Sienna, go. No, literally the question for Rico. Here's the question for Rico.
So I was just wondering, like, how do you go about coloring this? Like, is it digital? And, like, how do you go picking your color palettes? Because they're really great.
Thank you. Do you think I could show them the two preview pages early, Ryan? Do you think that would be naughty?
This is over the internet, though, right? This is not just here.
We're all good. No one's going to post anything to Twitter. No one's going to post anything to Twitter.
This will be public tomorrow.
No, it won't. Shut up.
The way I pick palettes is I try to get a nice harmony going first with if I'm doing blues, I'll do blues and purples and keep it all nice and cool, and then throw in something that is just opposite of them, something uncomfortable. That's how I pick palettes most of the time.
What do you mean by uncomfortable?
Just something that adds tension that doesn't necessarily match the other colors.
Can you give an example?
Like
with words.
No, I talk with pictures, Ryan. I'm not a wordsmith like you.
I don't know if you can see this. There's like browns, reds, and oranges, and then the shadows are like a bluish purple. Like a bluish purple, I guess, would be what you're talking about. You probably can't see it all.
Yeah, I mean, on Squirrel Girl, I kind of keep it more Saturday morning cartoons than most of the stuff I color. I don't know. It's just it just seems right with Erica's art. But yeah, I don't know. I'm a big Squirrel Girl fan. I'm not the heart and soul. I'm just a big fan of what Ryan and Erica are doing.
You're at the center of the Ricoverse.
But I do have Muner. Have you seen my Muner?
Oh, where'd you get that?
I got that 3D printed thing that you put on the Tumblr.
Oh, nice.
Like,
I want one.
It's cat.
Nice.
That is awesome.
You don't have a 3D printer, do you?
No, I don't. I ordered it. It was like $20. I thought it was...
You should like send that expense report to Marvel and.
It's a write-off.
You had Tom. You had a question. I know.
Oh yeah. My question is, since this is kind of like the slapstick Marvel universe, why do they even care to tell you like, oh, you can't play Captain America, he's old right now? Like, why can't you just have the classic archetype of Captain America or archetypes of the characters? Because I haven't read a Marvel book in 10 years, and I was like, why is Kraven immortal? Why is this?
Yeah, I mean that's an issue. I feel like the Deadpool card sort of help just say, just so you know he's immortal right now, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. But the reason I wanted to have it be like unambiguously set in the normal Marvel 616, right?
Yes. Yes.
The normal Marvel 616 universe is that I read this. There's one scholarly essay about Squirrel Girl that was written before the book came out that argues that the more Squirrel Girl's powers became, the more powerful she was, the more victories she racked up, the more she was pushed into this almost non-canonical status where she'd be at the beginning of the book, introducing it, breaking the fourth wall, stuff like that, where the argument was that as these women become more powerful, they're shifted out of the mainstream universe because they no longer fit in quite the same way. And I was like, I'm not sure if I buy that, but if it's true, it's baloney. So I wanted to have her be like, yeah, this is Squirrel Girl, and she's not taking place in a pocket universe or like a fun zany universe. It's the actual Marvel universe. She's an actual person in that universe, and the stuff she's doing is actually happening. Like, she didn't beat Galactus and it didn't count. She beat Galactus and she actually saved the real universe that we're all caring about reading. So, I mean, the price you pay is that you end up with Old Man Captain America sometimes and Immortal Kraven sometimes. But I wanted the stories to count effectively.
That seems like a fair trade. You know, if you're going to be able to do that thing, then that seems like an absolutely fair trade.
It's kind of nice to have a counterpoint to all the seriousness of like life and death and all the other nonsense.
Yeah, they asked if we wanted to be in Secret Wars, and the problem was we just started our book, right? And so it'd be really odd to be like 5 issues in and then now we're doing Secret Wars. And I also felt convinced that if she was in Secret Wars and they are changing the universe after that, it sounds like there's no real winners in that final climactic battle, and I feel like she should win that battle. And my plan was for the new #1 to open up with her, however Secret Wars is solved, open up with her in that scene showing that she was actually the one who did it behind the scenes. But they wouldn't tell me how Secret Wars is ending because that's a big surprise, so I couldn't do that. But maybe in like issue 10, when it's all out in the open, I'd be like, oh, here's a flashback to Secret Wars where she secretly saved everyone and it was no big deal.
No,
that's my plan.
Yeah. No, I think we all support that plan, actually. Was it so, and obviously we kind of alluded to it here, the book's about to start over again, #1. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of odd for a comic that's on issue 8. Is that right? 7, 8? I can't remember what the actual number is, but that's really strange to start over the book again at #1. How do you approach that?
It was hard. Like, in one sense, I know Rico posted something nice saying, here's a peek at #9, which is our new #1, which is great. In one sense, it's #9, because I don't want to throw away what we built and sort of say, hey, readers who've supported us for 8 books, that's all garbage now. Here's the new #1, because that's really unfair. So it builds on what's already there, but also it's a #1, so it has to be a jumping on point for new readers, and you have to introduce the character without making it seem repetitive. And it was actually a really hard issue to write because there's a lot of balls to keep in the air that wouldn't be there if it was our first #1. It wouldn't even be there if it wasn't our second #1 this calendar year. It's hard to react to what was in the first #1 when you also wrote it and you also wrote it recently. There's no distance there to be like, oh, me 10 years ago didn't know what he was doing. It was like, me 8 months ago, I think he was still a pretty good guy. It's tricky. But I think it'll be a fun issue, and everything. I don't think it's a secret that everything in the new number ones is jumping forward a couple months.
Yeah.
So you'll get to see some hints at what happened in that interim that we filled in later.
Was that like an easy thing for you to absorb as a writer? Like you're mandated to jump ahead for a number of months. Or was that difficult?
They gave me warning, and they said we'd like to have some. All the other books were asking for some weird, some shocking status quo shakeup that will make it interesting. But you guys are new, and you just established your status quo, so you don't have to shake it up if you don't want to. So my big shakeup is that instead of being first-year CS students, we've jumped ahead. Now they're starting second year.
Wow.
Hold on to your hats.
Wow. Wow. Did you pass everything in the first year?
Yeah.
I'm just making sure. She's unbeatable. Yeah, of course she did. No, that's true.
She's not the unflunkable Squirrel-Girl.
Oh, I literally asked your question. Well, that's not good. Does anyone else have a question? One of you must have something to say. Really? That's it? I don't know. Wow.
I like the Seinfeld joke in the first page.
Yeah?
Yeah. Because I was very apprehensive to read a Marvel book, and I started reading it 3 days ago, and the Seinfeld joke really kind of got me into it, and I got a piece of the book, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, this is actually something I'll agree with Tom. That I got multiple emails from people saying, I didn't know about a Marvel superhero comic for your book club. I thought this was going to be serious. But I actually really liked it. Oh my god! So I think that really surprised people. I think
That's what we want to hear.
Yeah.
And it's a lot lighter than what I normally read. I'm a big Jodorowsky junkie, humanoid person. Yeah.
I have a little fun in there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the trick with the book was to make it so that Squirrel Girl herself wasn't the punchline, and she wasn't mugging for the camera either. She was just a person who was a funny person in these sort of absurd situations. But like Deadpool tells you jokes. Like he turns to the camera and tells you jokes. And so you're laughing at him. And I wanted Squirrel Girl to not break the fourth wall, and you'd be laughing with her. Like she'd recognize the absurdity in some places, but she wouldn't be cracking jokes, I guess. It's a weird balance. It's weird. Writing's weird. The whole thing is bizarre.
So when you write this, are you approaching it as a superhero comic that has jokes, or are you approaching it as a comedy book that has a superhero?
Superhero comic for sure. Like she is a hero who uses her powers to fight usually costume criminals. Like it's a superhero book at its core, but it's focusing on the stuff that I think is fun about superheroes and less on the angst and the murders and the deaths and the stuff that was really cool in the 90s, but there's other ways to do stories too.
Yeah. No, absolutely. God, yes.
Yeah, we're building this weird little corner of the Marvel Universe with Howard and Squirrel Girl, and now Hellcat coming out. I feel like those are all under Will Moss, our editor, and I'm really excited to make the Marvel Universe weirder than it used to be.
Yeah. Do you talk to the other creative teams, or is it just Will? Is Will the person who's taking care of this, or are you talking to Chip? Are you talking to the Hellcat team?
Oh yeah, no, we chat with each other. We got secret plans.
Canadian Cabal.
Yeah, the Canadian Cabal. We're gonna take over your comics and then your country. Try to act surprised. But yeah, Chip and I are working on something where Squirrel Girl and Howard meet.
Yeah. Very good. Okay. Yes, in the back.
On that note, did the She-Hulk run that recently came out, did that inspire you in any way or open any doors at Marvel?
I think it did. I hadn't read it until after Squirrel Girl started, and I was like, "This is great. This is really good. I love it." But I feel like that book may have been a, let's test the waters with a book that's a bit offbeat from the other stuff we're publishing, and see if it can try to find an audience. I think it was canceled before its time. I thought it was a really terrific story, and I love that. I guess there's a Squirrel Girl parallel there unintentionally, but there you have a person trained in being a lawyer writing a character who's a lawyer to get more nuance, and Squirrel Girl is a computer science student written by a guy who was a computer science student. So I can hopefully, when it comes to computer science in the book, it's legit. I think it's issue 6, so it wouldn't be in the first trade, but in the next trade, there's a scene where they're in class getting a lecture on database design.
It was
And sorry?
It was fantastic. And
Thank you. But it's legit. Like, they're talking about ACID compliance, and that's something you can walk into a CS party and say that, and pass yourself off as a CS student.
I have another question from April Kent. She asks, "What other Marvel comics should Squirrel Girl fans read?" And I'll broaden that. Like, what other comics should Squirrel Girl fans read?
Sure.
Rico,
you probably got a good list for this.
No, I do, but she's asking you. She's not asking me.
Rico.
No, this isn't Rico. Oh. Right. Go ahead, Rico.
I don't know. Howard the Duck, Hellcat, Zodiac Star Force.
Zodiac
Yeah, that's a good choice.
Gotham Academy,
Yeah.
Lumberjanes, I would say.
Yeah.
Everything else I've ever written is also on that list.
I'm partial to Spider-Gwen.
Spider-Gwen, yeah, Spider-Gwen.
That's a fun book. There's a lot of corn dogs and hallucinatory Peter Porker references.
Do you know if Peter Porker is going to be in the universe after Secret Wars? Because I want to use him.
No, he is. He's in.
The actors are Jiminy Cricket in Spider-Gwen. He's her conscience.
Isn't he in Web Warriors?
Web Warriors. He's in Web Warriors. Yeah.
Perfect.
No, Peter Porker.
Porker.
Peter Porker. It's not Peter Parker. Peter Parker's Amazing Spider-Man. Peter Porker is in Web Warriors. He's the pig. Yes.
He's Spider-Man.
He's Spider-Man.
Spectacular Spider-Man.
Spectacular Spider-Man.
Okay.
I thought you haven't read Marvel Comics in
I
15
have
years.
because they're sold
Except this one.
and recycled.
Yeah.
Except for this.
We actually have
All right, so any last question? Come on, we must have a last question, a last statement. Cameron?
To elaborate on the earlier thing, so what can we look forward to Doreen getting into in this second volume of Squirrel Girl?
I can't say who the villain is because I've been specifically told not to say who the villain is, but he's really good. He or she is really good. What you can expect is there will be some shenanigans, and there's a bad guy in the first issue that I was really happy to use because he's sort of peak comics. He's I guess that's all I can say. But there'll be more class stuff. Sorry?
Doesn't the variant cover have that villain on it?
But that cover has it erased when released to the public.
But it's been online.
I think we should redirect the conversation somewhere else.
So I have a stand. It's not a question. Maybe it is a question. It's probably not a question. Remy, hi Remy again. Remy says Tippy Toe is awesome. And
I do.
I
love her.
Tippy Toe is adorable. Can Tippy have her own issue?
What is happening with Tippy that I can tell you is that issue 8 ends with Squirrel Girl teaching her friends how to speak basic squirrelese, And the reason for that was that in the first arc, first 4 issues, it was great because it was mostly just Squirrel Girl and Tippy, and so they could talk all the time. But the rule with Tippy was that if other humans were around who didn't speak squirrel, then she would have to make squirrel noises. And the problem with that is that when Nancy's around, or when Koi Boy or Chipmunk Hunk are around, that means Tippy can't speak. And you can do the, like, what's that, Tippy? You say, Billy's stuck down the well, sort of thing, once, but you can't really build a comic around that. So by having them learn basic squirrelies, it means that now Tippy can hang out with them and be more involved in the conversations instead of having to be sidelined, as she kind of was in the arc with Ratatoskr and the Asgardians, which was too bad. I wanted to have more of her, but there was so much plot and there were so few issues that I couldn't fit it all in. There was a part in the draft where Tippy and Nancy were in Asgard, and Tippy was communicating through sign language, like charades, basically. Like, we have to go because of time, but didn't have room for that, unfortunately.
Why no Monkey Joe?
He's dead.
Oh.
No.
Yeah, in the first issue, Squirrel Girl wears an MJ necklace, and Will was like, "Is that for Mary Jane?" And we're like, "No, it's for Monkey Joe, because Monkey Joe was killed in Great Lakes Avengers."
Okay. I thought you meant because of AIDS, because it was in the 80s, but then by that logic, never mind. But yeah.
Great Lakes Avengers. Are we going to see any of them in Volume 2?
I would like to. I really like Flatman. I like that he's like a sucky Mr. Fantastic. Mr. Fantastic's already kind of sucky. His powers compared to everyone else are the dead of the group for sure. Yeah, I think they're fun people. I like to work them in because the GLA, or the Great Lakes Initiative, is a big part of who Squirrel Girl is, I feel like. It'd be fun to see more of those guys.
So is there any Marvel villain who you think is unbeatable that Doreen couldn't beat?
The only thing I shied away from was having her beat up the Hulk in that Avengers scene, because I thought 26 seconds is awfully short to beat up the Hulk. So I want to save that for a future issue where, like, she can, if she has to beat him up, you'll see how it happens and not do that off-screen gag. That's the only time we did the off-screen joke, because it feels kind of like a cheat, but if you do it rarely, it can work. Because in her previous appearances, Squirrel Girl usually beat people off-screen, and so the joke was like, how did she do it with her squirrel powers? And the fun in writing it is showing how she could do that with her squirrel powers. But I thought it was fun to have like a one joke where she does it off-panel, just for like the fun of it. And plus, like, beating up old man Captain America, it's kind of mean.
But a good kind of mean,
Yeah, he had it coming.
All right, so any last question? We have a last question of any kind? No, wait. Julie? Do it. Bring us home, Julie.
I know it's kind of mean, but I was just wondering if Squirrel Girl was going to get stuck in any holes anytime soon.
I'm not sure if everyone knows, I got stuck in a hole a couple weeks ago.
No, it was great. Like, right.
Yeah, I was walking my dog, and I messed up so badly that it made the news. I got stuck in a hole, and tweeted my way out of it. People on Twitter helped me combine what was in my inventory to escape. And it was actually a lot of fun. However, Squirrel Girl can leap trivially, so it might be hard to get her stuck in a hole. Although I saw some like sassy internet commenter who was like, "This is probably just to like draw attention to the book he's working on." I bet you. Like when I get out of the hole, I'm like, "Wow, I'm out from the hole. This is great. Just like Squirrel Girl out now from Marvel Comics." But that didn't happen. Yeah, I recommend. Like, I enjoyed my time in the hole, but the problem now is that like anyone can get stuck in a hole once. But if I get stuck in a hole again, I become the hole guy who's always getting stuck in a hole. So I've used up my one get stuck in a hole card, and now I'm stuck.
Forever stuck.
Very nice. Well, thank you very much, Ryan. Thank you very much, Rico, for coming.
Thank you for having us.
We all love Squirrel-Girl, and you know we're very much supporting it from here on. So thank you,
Awesome.
guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.